My name is Rebecca Smith, and I'm the owner and CEO of the media company Be Fresh Productions. In 2020, we were selected as the new steward of public access TV in Minneapolis, and we launched SPEAK MPLS right here where we're broadcasting live from this evening. As a member-powered community media center, we are reimagining the future of media through education, training opportunities, equipment, two studios, and experiences like this for Minneapolis residents and our community. As we celebrate 40 years of public access TV in Minneapolis this year, we will continue to provide access to information, the space, and a platform to broadcast stories that matter to you. Thank you for being a part of our series, Amplify MPLS Live. We've opened up our studios this evening for a panel amplifying the voices of Black business owners and an important community discussion about the Blue Line in North Minneapolis. We are live on Facebook and on Speak MPLS TV channels 16, 17, and 75 on Comcast Xfinity. And now I would like to introduce you to our host for the conversation, the Emmy Award-winning Georgia Fort.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of you who are here with us this evening. Thank you for those of you who are joining us online. As Rebecca stated, I'm an independent journalist headquartered in the Twin Cities. This fall, I started reporting on the Blue Line extension and quickly realized there are so many people who will be impacted. There was no way that we could interview everyone. Then in doing an update on the story, our coverage went viral. We realized there's people all across the country who have experienced displacement due to development. And that's something that no one in this community wants to see happen. So Rebecca and I started discussing how we can utilize our platforms to have a conversation about the proposed light rail before the route is fully finalized. The current recommended route for the Blue Line extension connects the downtown light rail to Brooklyn Park by coming right through the heart of North Minneapolis. And for context, North Minneapolis is a historic Black neighborhood that has a lot of Black-owned businesses. When we think about this being a historic Black neighborhood, in recent years, we've seen a resurgence of development of Black-owned properties. The North Side is culturally rich and home to many cornerstone businesses like Juxtaposition and KMOJ. While this neighborhood is not perfect, it's home to so many of our community leaders, and any development that happens on the North Side, whether good or bad, will be felt for generations. And tonight, we'll discuss some of those complexities. Joining us for the conversation will be people who are currently working on the project and some people who will be affected by the project. But first, we want to begin with three business owners. Two owned property near the proposed Blue Line extension, and one owns property near the light rail in St. Paul, and can speak to what it was like to navigate light rail construction. And in fact, Tim, I feel like that's a really good place to start because you can truly speak to what it's like being a business owner. You can speak to what it was like during the planning process, right? Mm-hmm. You've been on university for 30 years.
Yes.
You can speak to just how promises were made of how the neighborhood would become vibrant and you would gain more business. And if that actually happened. So if you don't mind just, kicking things off tonight with a little bit of background about your business, what that process was like, okay. How many Black and Brown owned businesses were there before and how many are still there now?
Well, as far as the number of businesses left, there are 5. On University Avenue, Pasco and University would actually be the cross streets. As far as the amount of businesses, that number is probably up into the 20s and 30s that I know people who actually lost their business due to the light rail doing whatever it's supposed to do. We as businesses, and I get it, it's just how businesses act and it's how businesses are sold things. And they're told that this is going to be great for business for you. It's going to bring so many people to the St. Paul Midway area. And at that time, obviously pre-uprising, the Midway there was a lot of businesses in the Midway at that time. So we didn't really have a problem with directing traffic or getting people to actually come shop in the area. And so my business is retail, so I need people to come hang out. The businesses that are attached to me are all barbershops, beauty salons, hair supply, furniture, all Black-owned businesses that need people to come to the area. And so what we were promised is, hey, we're going to shoot this down the middle of the street. It's going to bring a number of people to the area. It's exciting. It's going to tie Minneapolis and St. Paul. It's going to make it faster. So at that point, we're in a position where there's not a whole lot that we can do. You guys might be more on the front end of this, or even the middle portion, where you may be able to affect some change, and maybe the things that I'll say will help in that direction for you. I actually remember the day, the first inaugural run. They had all the businesses were to, put out things on the street, and they had flags and balloons. And I remember the wind was a ridiculous day. The wind was blowing all over the place, and people who did have tables and, hey, come shop at my business signs and all these things, subsequently blew down. So most people who kind of flew through on the train really didn't even see businesses that, and so that was kind of a bad omen for what it really turned into be for us. Because as business owners, there's no stops that actually affect our businesses. It's different than the bus, where you could be like, oh, I'm just going to pull, and Pasco University used to be a stop. So people would get off the bus and do their shop, buy their beauty supplies and get their hair cut and, whatever. Now it's kind of, you go past and you go, hey, I might go back there when I get my car, or I get back on the train and I'm willing to walk 2-3 blocks to come back to this business, which is an important fact, because you lose those people. They're not coming back. That's just my opinion. They're not coming back. So the time it took for this all to happen, we had, there was no street for a year and a half. So I remember we had a drawbridge to come to our door. So if you were coming to the neighborhood, you had to hit the drawbridge and come in and shop. And so we had to find creative ways as business owners. That's when we started making deliveries. That's when we started doing things in the mail and, whatever else. And it was just one of those things that I just felt like we never asked for all this extra action to happen. Like that might not have been the best thing for us as businesses. I looked at it as like the bigger box stores, the Cubs, the Targets, they all benefit from this. It's great. It's great for them. It lands right in front of Target. Not that Target needed any help, but it does, Cub was a little different in our area because it was one of the off blocks. So again, people carrying groceries, and we have older people, now you got to carry groceries 2 blocks to get to the train, to get to wherever your next destination is. So yeah.
Thank you for painting that picture for us.
Yeah.
Kenya, Tito, you all own property right along or near where the proposed Blue Line extension is expected to go. Kenya, I know you have some experience in working on transit development. And so I'm just curious to know from you all, what has this process experience been like for you? I know what we're finding on current reports is about 24 properties in North Minneapolis will either be partially or fully demolished. That was the latest report we checked. It's not your building, right? So you won't be impacted in that way. But when you talk about the impact, right? And Tim, he's painted this picture. It's not just about whether or not a building will be partially or fully demolished. It's also the noise. It is the access to the building. It is the traffic, the flow. It's the culture of the community.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I think that it's also the disruption, right? That's going to happen within the residential zones. Thinking about it broader than just what my benefits may be or may not as a business owner. But I do think about the businesses that are within the building, and they depend on, their clients coming, who many are transit dependent already. And so there definitely is an impact. I don't know. I think I'm still kind of, pros and cons. It was scary though, initially, thinking about what that meant for when it was proposed to affect my building, right? Because that was part of the first, you know, planning work. And so I felt that on the back end from all of the no's I received from the money that I was trying to get to develop my building, to redevelop it. I lost over $5 million worth of support because of the idea of the light rail, even before a decision was made. Banks and other folks were like, nope, our programs work like X, Y, and Z. And if the building is going to be demolished, I'm like, they hadn't made a decision yet, but it was still the proposed idea. So I think it already just did a lot of economic damage to our community, the way that it's put out there, because that meant that a lot of us were told no for renovations we wanted to make. And that in itself, and it also turned people away from wanting to be involved, thinking about tenancy, thinking about all the support we needed for every step of planning for what our future looks like. And so it definitely compromised us financially, that we can't get that from the county or Met Council on the front end, although we just have to work through the process. And there was a lot of questions of what that meant for us. And so the questions that I was constantly asked was, does it make sense to invest in the building if you're going to tear it down anyway? And my comeback was, of course, this is how we double down on wealth, in that sense. But did I really want to tear the building down for that? I really didn't. But I had to think about alternative ways that I can show up, post that. It went from, we're going to, tear down part of your sidewalk, to the whole building has to go. So it was stressful. And what did that mean for me, right? But for the community too, because everything that the light rail initially proposed was everything we worked hard to build in our quest to build Black wealth in the community, and that was threatened. And we can look at what an opportunity is and how you can, benefit post that. But then it's like, we don't really know if that's going to happen, even though there's money for that. Like, who wants to go through that process? And what does that really mean? And so those were a lot of questions that I grapple with, even though I'm a pro-transportation person. But I had to think about the bigger picture, which is what I said, but also the community of people who don't own, that are on the corridor, who do live in the area that, may sustain a whole different level. So it's not lost on me. I'm still processing it. I got a little bit relief that it's not coming in front of my building, but it is going in back of my building at this point. So I'm still trying to understand what that really means.
And Tito, I understand you had somewhat of a similar situation in terms of wanting to develop in the neighborhood and having some issues with financing.
Yep, certainly. So, when I first started like really getting involved in conversations about Blue Line, when some of the people, the ones that come around and want to talk to you about the impacts and how do you feel about it, so on and so forth, like early on, like really early on, I'm thinking about, okay, so I just bought my building. I'm thinking about the property value going up. I'm excited about that. You know what I mean? I'm like, yes, you know what I mean? Kenya talked about wealth. This is, how we generate wealth. So I was excited. Then I started like talking to various residents, you know what I mean? Beyond just the business owners, talking to people who live in the neighborhood, have homes there, you know what I mean? Whether they're renters or owners, particularly so a lot of the owners that don't have, they have their homes, but they don't have a significant amount of wealth to go along with it. You know what I mean? And so a lot of people were concerned about, am I going to lose my home? You know what I mean? Are my property taxes going to go up so much where I can no longer afford my home? And so then I started to take a step back from my excitement, thinking, well, this is just not about me. I can't only think about how, this could potentially, help me out. I think about the community more broadly. And so, I was working on a building directly across the street from our barbershop. And, with some of the banking tools that, Kenya mentioned, is like, no, these are like, you can't get this like a new market tax credit. You cannot get in that loan product and get out of it early. You can't. And so, I was gung ho working on the deal, had a purchase agreement with the owner of the building, moving forward. City of Minneapolis, I was looking for funding for them. They said no. And the bank said no. We can't do it. And now if I have my own money and I want to roll the dice and take a chance, I could have done that. But, you know, I'm not looking for that sort of, you know, financing. So, and I brought in the guys from Hennepin County, and I talked about it. And I talked about how great, you know, my idea would be for this community, how it's much needed, because I'm thinking about food and how we, you know, live in a food desert. And I'm trying to paint the picture of how important it is, you know, not just this physical structure, you know what I mean? Because that's just a container. It's about what's inside, you know what I mean? And what it can mean and what it can do for the community and how it can help impact positively, you know, Black business owners who are looking for a space, you know what I mean, to run their businesses in or out of. And, you know, I did as much as I could to try and paint a picture, like, just leave this building alone. It's one of the nicer buildings on West Broadway. We have a whole lot of buildings that need probably demolished or, you know, like an extensive renovation. This is one didn't hardly need any work other than cosmetically what I want to do to it. And so I'm like, this, you know, this building cannot go. And then there was ideas about, well, maybe we can take off the face of the building and so on and so forth. And I'm thinking, it just doesn't make sense, you know? And so, you know, like I said, I was excited. Then I came down and got more realistic and just thinking about how it's going to impact not only me, but the entire community. And it just doesn't seem like a net gain. You know, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like a net gain.
Thank you for sharing that. Mm-hmm. You know, when I think about a large scale development like this, and then I also think about the organic development of the people who have been in the neighborhood, we would hope that we could find some middle ground. And I don't know if we will, but when we look at businesses like Tim's Urban Lights, which has been a pillar in the community for 30 years and is one of a few Black businesses that survived the light rail. I want to bring it back too and talk about, right, like the idea of the Blue Line extension is to connect Brooklyn Park to downtown, which is going to make it easy for Brooklyn Park residents to be able to come downtown for work or play, and people who, you know, work or play downtown to be able to have access further out across Minneapolis, right? It's a connector. But what about all those stops in between? What about all the businesses in between? What about all the residents in between, right? And so, Tim, can you speak to what your experience has been like with a different type of traffic coming through the neighborhood? Have you seen an increase in crime? Have you seen a decrease in crime? What has that been like from your vantage point?
I mean, I think at this point, it's probably an increase. Because I think what you find on the Green Line, and I'll be honest, I ride the Green Line every day. I live in downtown Minneapolis. I leave my transportation in downtown Minneapolis. I take the train because it's more effective. But it's like a bed and breakfast on the train. So, and a number of people that I speak with, especially older residents, they don't want to get on that because of what they have to deal with on a daily basis. So as much as we're connecting things, I think there's a problem that needs to be looked at of who's on. Not that we're not supposed to everybody should be able to ride. Everybody should be able to do it, you know, enjoy it, get to where you got to get to. But I think it's the problems that some people bring on the train that gives the train, especially the Green Line, a bit of a bad reputation at this particular point. And so people look for other ways to move around the city. So, and we're noticing that, at least I see the same people all the time. And I see the same people who hang out in downtown Minneapolis are now deciding to go hang out in St. Paul and do the same things they're doing in downtown Minneapolis and downtown St. Paul and throughout the Midway. So, you know, yeah.
And before we turn things over to our community discussion and invite others to participate, Tito and Kenya, I know there has been a lot of engagement that has been done around what the route should be, what are amenities that can be implemented in this plan to benefit the neighborhood. Can you share with us what your experience has been going through that engagement process? What have you heard from other people who have shown up to maybe some of those meetings you participated in? And do you feel like your voices and the voices of your neighbors have been listened to so far?
I don't personally. I mean, so I think there's been a lot of engagement. I don't know that I trust that it's really, you know, serving what we're being told that is, supposed to serve. I think, probably thinking, the planners of the Blue Line, I think they're, probably learning from what happened in St. Paul and knowing that we got to get out in front and talk to people. You know what I mean? But it just feels like the decisions about, what's going to happen has already been decided. And so it feels like a, good faith effort, but I just don't know if it's real. And I'm not accusing anybody of lying or, pulling the wool over our eyes, but it just seemed like the decisions have already been made. People don't trust it. I've spoken to very, very, very few people that are for the Blue Line that live in North Minneapolis. Very few. And it just,
Hard to understand. We also, while we were researching for the story, struggled to find those voices. As a journalist, we do want to amplify all sides of an issue. And we talked to a lot of residents and we talked to a lot of business owners. And you found more people than I did because we could not find people who live or work or own businesses in North Minneapolis that were actually in support of it.
people feel like it's going to be a pass through largely. And people think, so when you look at transportation infrastructure historically in this country, it has always negatively impacted Black and brown low income neighborhoods. Always. And as a matter of fact, I know in Biden's infrastructure bill, there was some money that he, put forth to try and undo some of the damage around the country that transportation infrastructure has caused. And it's like, here we are again. And Kenya and I, we haven't lived through, we can read the history of what's happened in other neighborhoods, but we don't know what it's gonna be like once it actually happens on West Broadway. We can listen to Tim and hear his stories, talk to people in the Rondo neighborhood or other areas around the country if we so decide, but we just don't know how it's really gonna impact us. So yes, we've been made promises. We've been told this is gonna happen. This is gonna be great for the community, but
I mean, I think
that's what it is, pass through.
Yeah.
That's what it is, a pass through.
Yeah.
We're not affected by the light rail business wise. It didn't increase our business. It didn't decrease our business except the time that the streets were shut down and everything. So, we had to figure out other ways to make ourselves creative and kind of roll with the punches, but pass through is the exact word because people pass through every day. It's not affecting us.
I mean, I want to say, like, we do know, right? Because, like, we're living in the aftermath of transportation development. 94 wasn't always the route that it is, right? And Ocean Highway wasn't always the route. Those went through the heart of some of the Black and other businesses to expand the highway for, other purposes. So we're living in part of the aftermath. And I think that, but also aftermath post the exit of the Jewish community in North Minneapolis, right? Because it didn't always look how it looks right now either. This is just what it looks like under, African Americans' expanded presence there post the riots, race riots, right? From the murders that happened to Black people who were not allowed to buy homes in North Minneapolis, all of that. So Dr. Josie Johnson, lots of those folks did a lot of work to make sure, particularly Dorothy Bridges, that we can even, most of us probably don't even know that those folks are responsible for our large population being present on the North Side through the work of NERC and others back in the 60s and 70s. So that work was post and during some transportation. I guess for me, yes, there is a history of it. I think that, I guess I want to be, optimistic and say that I think part of what challenges what this opportunity could be or how we see what the opportunity is our ability to really come together around what a shared vision is for us, that it really doesn't include the government in that way, but for how we take this opportunity and create it, the reality we want to see out of it. So if we were to have it, we're gonna lose something. That's just the way it is with anything that you build, and no matter where you build it at, it's the give and take. And I think, what are we willing to give? But how can we rebuild those things in other areas? And so the homes that we're losing, from where the route is, okay, there's probably about 50 other vacant homes in that area. How do we acquire that to help repopulate what that looks like? And I think it's like, how do we build a vision around it? So I stayed out of the engagement, because what I want to be clear is that this is not the first time, nor new information from the North Side about this light rail. This has a long history. And I think what I've tried to articulate to the county is that we have to be clear that we're building on a momentum of other people's opinions and ideas that people shaped 10, 15 years ago, before this new group of folks. And so Northside has had a voice and opinion. In fact, Northside has established what their priorities were a long time ago about this light rail, that we can just go and see what our folks said. It won't be too much different, but we didn't just start this with this new route. We're redoing it because the route has changed, but it was proposed to go up Ocean Highway, up Penn, so it has a history and a whole bunch of people that was wrapped around it. And the only reason that the conversation came to the North Side was because Senator Champion required it to. Before, it wasn't even a conversation for us. It was going to go all around us. As in St. Paul, there was no stops originally planned to come through the community. I work with the Alliance on that to create the Stops for Us campaign with Metric Giles and all of them who organized around making sure the light rail. St. Paul sued Met Council. They went to the federal government to require Met Council to create stops inside of the community. It wasn't part of Met Council's original plan. And so these steps, and I think what I've learned just from my history is that, there are predetermined ideas about sometimes where these route goes based on a number of factors, because these are long range plans that happen in this sphere of work. But it doesn't mean it's a done deal. The community does have a voice and power. I think it's about how we collectively, as much as we can, organize around what this needs to be for us and how it works, if it does. And I don't know enough of where those conversations are happening outside of what the county is leading. Because back in the days, the county didn't lead our engagement. We led it ourselves. They didn't determine our vote. They did their vote and we did ours. And so the community took more ownership of what that looks like in that time frame, that forced the county to rethink a lot of things. And then the railroads came in and pulled the trump card on the whole line, because they owned the railroad. So the route wasn't able to go there. So I think if I can engage then and now, it was the communities organizing around this for themselves, infusing their own vision and about what the future of this looked like, versus what I'm seeing now. And I don't know everything that's going on, believe me, so I'm not suggesting that we're not doing anything. But I'm seeing the government lead that more. And when the government lead it, to me, I know they work hard and do their best to translate complex things, but there's a lot of gaps in what that looks like and how they talk about it. And it don't translate. And there's a lot of trauma from what this history has been and how the government still shows up and the pain we still in. This don't fare well. It don't fare well. And I try to have those conversations with the county, but they're going to do how they do. And we're going to get this, because we live in real life and we're still in a lot of pain and we're still seeing a lot of gentrification. We're still like missing a lot of stuff. And so, I don't know.
Well, we do hope that this conversation today can be a launching pad to start some of those conversations, to engage people in the community and bring stakeholders who are actually working on the project to the table and have a conversation. Because as Kenya pointed out, it's not a done deal. And so while we know that there's a recommended route, ground has not broken on this project yet, right? And so I'm hopeful that some voices will be heard today. I'm also skeptical, as I'm sure many people in this room are. But I think every person being here today is a first step towards us actually having an open and honest conversation about the way people in the community, the people we know at least, right? We don't know everybody, but the people who we know and what they're saying and how they're feeling and the experiences that they're having. And so if the panelists have any final comments before we turn things over to the community conversation, I welcome you in closing remarks, but also welcome you to continue to participate in this conversation as well.
I'm good. I want to engage with everybody, but y'all go ahead.
I think playing off the words you said, skeptical is kind of where I feel that the North Side needs to be, is skeptical about this situation, because everything is not always what it seems and it feels like. And yes, you have to give up some things to get some things, but at what cost? So.
One thing I would say more is that, you know, there's kind of two places that I'm sitting in now about the blue line, and it's the, you know, I'm still resistant towards it, but I'm also thinking about, you know, advocating, like, you know, making sure that not only me, but, you know, people that work in my business and people that live in North Minneapolis and other business owners get exactly what they should get, you know, if this line does come down.
The only last thing I will add is the deficit in kind of how the philanthropic world is addressing this too, and how concerning that is. The Green Line had a whole coalition of foundations around it that helped to invest in the development of some of the housing and things that was there, whether it didn't even come to us per se, but they put that money up. Southwest also has that same kind of approach and coalition. You know, you all know about that, right? And we also know that the Southwest line has a theme. It's really about the medical technology out in Edina and all those other places where, you know, Blue Cross Blue Shield and health partners merge. So their medical technology are, you know, providers and workforce development, all of that. So it was about investing in that corridor because of that. Right? This blue line started because of Target. Where's Target in the conversation? Their headquarters in Brooklyn Park. So there are things that I don't know if we're talking about that. We're you know, and where's the philanthropic conversation, and how pivotal still is, what is it, North Memorial in this conversation? Because back in the days, Barb Johnson, 4th Ward City Council member, was trying to ram this line up Lowry Avenue as a medical corridor, because it was all about developing a theme and strategy. So there are ideas. I'm not saying we know this or have it, but like, y'all have this information. So how are we talking about it? And where are those circles and conversations about not just the money from the anti-displacement, but how's the private philanthropic and other folks coming along to help support communities' capacity differently this time? Because we've seen it twice already. For Southwest, it missed business owners in St. Paul, but it happened for those folks who had big apartment complexes. So what's going to be different, and how do we trust that? And that part is missing on the North Side. We're often tasked with solving our own problems and financing them too. And so I just want to just put that out there.
At this time, I want to open the floor up for a discussion with community. There is no certain order, so if you want to just raise your hand and we'll pass the microphone around. Please make sure you introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I am Adway Pugh. I am a Jordan resident and the executive director of Jordan Area Community Council. And I'm listening to everybody, and everybody is on point. I understand all of it and I feel it all. I am coming from being a resident and executive director of a neighborhood organization. So in North Minneapolis, it's not just North Minneapolis, it's broke up into neighborhoods. So where they're proposing the blue line to begin coming down Washington, that's Hawthorne. Then you cross the street, then you go into Jordan. Jordan is affected at two ends when it comes to the blue line. It's affected at 21st at where King's property is, Tito's property is, that's Jordan, all the way until it gets to North Memorial Hospital. And so it's hit at those 2 points. As far as engagement is concerned, I've been in a lot of the engagement that the Met Council has done. And in each neighborhood, there's 8,000 to 5,000 people in each neighborhood. So collectively, if you look at the numbers, directly, approximately 50,000 people is being affected. When you look at the numbers of the engagement, it's way below that. It's like at 1%, not at 10%, maybe at 1%. So at least half of those 50,000 people should be engaged as far as where the route is going, because it's going to directly affect approximately 50,000 people. My other concern is because it hits Jordan at 2 points, I feel like because we have been lied to historically about everything for so long, especially transportation and how it affects the Black and brown communities, I feel like they're going to start this process and say, oops, it's not going to fit down Broadway, Adway, like you said, because it's 2 curves down Broadway, one deeper than the other, and the new apartment buildings on each side of the street. And they're going to have to go through Jordan, which will cut the Jordan neighborhood in half. Not talking about what it had already, it would potentially already do to Hawthorne. So that's my concern. And every time I talk about it or I bring it up, because every meeting I go to, I bring it up, I say it, and I'm going to continue to say it, because there is 8,000 to 10,000 residents in Jordan specifically, and in other neighborhoods it is too. What is going to happen, and how is this going to devastate that we can't return from this? The tornado came through in 2011 and displaced so many families. How is this going to affect people? And it hurts me to understand that the neighborhood that I love and live in and have been, I wasn't born and raised in Minnesota, I wasn't, but the North Side is the closest thing to my neighborhood that I grew up in Chicago, where you see so much diversity. We have the highest population of Black people and other cultures in North Minneapolis. And how is that going to affect them, and where are they going to move to? Where are you going to put these people? We're already dealing with all the homelessness that we have now across Minneapolis. How is this going to affect? And I'll let Angela talk about the displacement thing, but that's what my concern is. And I still have not gotten a solid answer on that, because again, historically, we are already suffering. As Black people, we suffer daily because of historical trauma. This is continuing to traumatize us. And there are other options of a route. And just because the railroad said no, you want to come through our community and devastate our community. And also, it was an article before I finish, and I'll finish it this. Beckwith. I don't know who Beckwith. There you go. It's an article here, and it says, but Beckwith said, now I don't remember which article this is. Wait a minute. My phone rang. As soon as I got what it said, it says, but Beckwith said, broader idea behind public transit is to serve as many people as possible. It is just good practice. We want to put these alignments where they serve people, she said. Serving the most people is also critical to winning federal funding. An earlier iteration of the project put a price tag at $1.5 billion, but the current estimate won't be revealed until next year. So is this really about the people, or is it about federal funding to get this blue line built? And I'm finished.
To piggyback off of that, my name is Angela Williams. I'm the Housing Stability Coordinator at Sabathnia Community Center. My background is housing organizing, and I also sit on the Equity Policy Group with Ms. Riva, trying to tailor or create a structure going forward on how transportation should include communities and other things. My thing is the displacement of people that will lose their housing. This relocation assistance was done in 2015. It's got 2015 on here, but it's so disrespectful. Can you Go through the,
Okay.
and I've highlighted everything. No, show them.
Oh, show them.
Yeah, it's just disrespectful. It's they're not giving people who are going to lose their homes anything. What the council is doing, what it's saying, is saying that you got to be eligible for relocation expenses. Then there's reimbursement. You got to spend your money first before they do it, and then you can't have your brothers move you. You got to use a moving company, and you got to get 2 estimates from that. Who can afford that when I got 7 brothers? And then the council determines the reimbursement, and then they got to have prior approval, for like if you need your stuff to go in storage. Well, why would you need approval? And then the cost depending on how many rooms of furniture that you have. If somebody just have a place, what difference does it make if they got furniture in it or not? It's still where they live, and it's still what they value as home, or what they call home. And then the council is inspecting your goods. This thing right here, and it is a thing. It's disrespectful. It's diminishing the value of people in this community where this train is getting ready to come. This is not her article. What Audrey just read sums it up. It's not about people. People are numbers now. And the North Side community, instead of them investing in bringing businesses up, they're tearing them down. And I do understand business owners, you got to be optimistic about what's coming because you have a business, you're serving communities. But the realistic part of it is it's going to destroy North Minneapolis. And we've had these conversations with those 3 over there several times. We even with the NAACP, Minneapolis NAACP, and they have residents about how many? About 25 people from Lynn Park saying, hey, I've had my home since 1986. I don't want no train. They're destroying generational wealth. And like Mr. Wilson Tito said, it says, in fact, historically, anything that has brought Black wealth to communities, white people have destroyed it. And we don't have to sugarcoat, and we don't have to pretend like it's not a Black-white thing when it is. So they don't value Black lives. And this right here is just so disrespectful to everybody involved. And then what about housing? And I'm gonna say this is my last point. We have slumlords in our communities who don't make repairs. There's nothing about regulatory services. If we're going to do anything to make sure the properties are up to code or whatever, they're just gonna give them a check. They're rewarding them, the landlords, property owners, when they're not rewarding the people that live in the properties. So if you have a house full of furniture, right? If you have rooms, if you have furniture. So it says for the first room, you get $575. The second bedroom, you get $725, and it kind of goes up. But if you don't have any furniture, they'll give you $450 for one room and then $100 for the rest. And it's just disrespectful. And they don't value people that look like me. And I'm not afraid to say it. They this Upper Harbor Terminal, all of that is for convenience for white folks to get to that venue. That it won't even be and I'm tired of people saying affordable housing, because housing is not affordable. You need low income housing, because people aren't making $3,000 or $4,000, $6,000 a month to pay for this high rent. So our council representatives are not working for the community. They're not. And I understand Senator Champion, it starts with him all the way down. And they're letting it happen. Our Black leaders are letting it happen. Everybody's sitting behind a facade, thinking that this is going to benefit our community in some type of way. And we all know it's not. And I'm just tired of the engagement. When we talked about engagement and outreach. They had groups down on Glenwood passing out flyers. Ain't no train gonna come down Glenwood. And so I questioned it, like, why are you down there? So they got offended, and rightfully so, because I was coming at people, and this is it's just heartbreaking that they're not valuing anybody's voice. It's about the businesses, but it's about the people. It's more about the people. And if you don't value people, and the article that Chris gave her comments to, they want federal funding. They want these billions of dollars. And when they do this construction, will members of the community get employment opportunities to work on this? You know what I'm saying? Will you reach out? Will people that look like us work on this project? Do you have consultants in the room right now that look like us? You know, and I don't think you do. So that it's just disrespectful. It's going to tear the community down. And we need help. We need help to stop it. That's what we need.
Here too. I've been here for 40 years. My mom's a resident of Jordan for 18 years. She still lived there. We're investors. I own real estate property on 21st and other places too. So this isn't just about my business. That's just one way of how I invest in the community, but it's my hood. It's where I grew up. My family lived here. I went to elementary school, junior high, high school. So I have lived life and experience on the north side. I'm a north sider. So I'm not just a business owner. I just want to make that clear. And that, you know, we're struggling. There's a tension in the different diverse populations of who we are. Everybody's not poor on the north side. We have a buying power of $400 million a year. We only keep 160 million of it. So we got different perspectives. And I think part of the struggle that some of us have is, where's the balance? Like, how do we build a community that supports a whole cycle of life? For we work hard to make sure that our children and families can get to a better place in life. And when they get there, where can they go over north? So we don't want to just build a community that's based on poverty and struggle. We want a community that we can thrive in too. And so how do we create a more balanced perspective, one, but also a community that supports us through our life cycle, that isn't also about pushing out people who can't afford that either. So it's a balance. And I just think that, you know, it's how do we create more space for that in these conversations, where it isn't just a zero sum of just the struggle. It's about, you know, because we're trying, that's why we got businesses there. I ain't making no real money having no business there. I'm working towards that. It's going to take a little bit longer because the value of my property is lower because it's over north. If I was on Lake Street in certain places, I could charge 2 times what I do for rent. Right. And so it's an investment and a commitment in a different way. So I'm not here for the money. I'm trying to really do my part to try to figure out how to build in community. But it's not just about what I'm doing or Tito. We got to take all kind of stuff into account. All the women in my building are struggling. Right. They mamas and everything. So I just want to just insert that into the conversation, that it isn't just from a perspective of being a business owner. I'm an investor. I'm a resident. I'm a North Sider. My family lives there. I care about the whole picture. I just so happen to have a business there by choice. And I want that. I want more. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Kenya.
I'm puzzled as to why we are even having this discussion. The individuals that are doing what they are doing, they had a mind set up, right? They had a mind set up of what they want to do with us, right? We can have a conversation till we blue in the face. There's something they doing. There's something that they've been doing. And honestly, we'll be fools to honestly think that they care about how we feel about our neighborhood. You know what I mean? Like, the North Side is valuable to me. It's one of the last places where you could actually see kids cross the street on Broadway. I used to go to Urban Lights. I saw what happened when the light rail came through there. It's devastating. We done dealt with 94 chopping down Rondo. We still healing from that. My biggest thing is I'm tired of our communities being exploited, right? We get exploited, and then we get people to speak for us that don't even know who we are in the city in which we live. And we have people that go to school and they smart and they do all the things that they're supposed to do so that they can have the positions that they do. But you forget a lot about the individuals that actually live and that died in these neighborhoods, right? I understand the value on land. I've seen what happens. I'm from the Robert Taylor homes in Chicago. I know exactly what happened when it got peaceful in my neighborhood. Individuals ended up on Glenwood, on State Street, the same way they was on Glenwood, trying to get advice on how to populate our area. I'm tired of colonization. the train historically divided this country when it first began. There was no benefits to the individuals who inhabited this land before those trains went through. And in fact, the trains that went through were actually used as gun ranges to shoot and execute pretty much their livelihood on their way to the West. I've seen this happen in so many different occasions. And I'm really tired of being exploited. Like, if I felt like the county really cared about what's happening on Broadway, it wouldn't even be a discussion about putting a train on Broadway. You wouldn't want a train riding down France. You wouldn't want a train riding up Excelsior. Why would you want to do this? Because we are the easiest to exploit? Because when you come into our community, the only people that speak for us are the ones that, in my opinion, earn a master's degree. And when I say master's degree, they work for master. You understand what I'm saying? Like, I'm tired. And I really don't feel like y'all really care. If y'all really cared, the conversation of a train coming down Broadway wouldn't even happen. It wouldn't even happen. Like, and I get frustrated thinking about it because we've seen it so many times over and over again. I know what it's like to see a Starbucks on State Street. It's ridiculous. I know what it was like before that Starbucks came and how many individuals in this neighborhood really could have benefited from the $1.8 billion that y'all about to spend to demolish a neighborhood simply because we don't have the right kind of people to speak for us. I'm tired of getting exploited. You're bogus for coming down Broadway. Flat out. I don't know who hearing it, wherever you at, whoever's behind that mastermind, we get it. We know what you want. It's valuable land. The people ain't worth too much of nothing. We are considered a commodity. And it's evidence with the violence that has been able to plague our communities, down to the kidnappings, to the drug distributions, to the guns that get released into our neighborhoods. We get it. But if there was any ounce of care, the discussion of coming on Broadway wouldn't even happen. You would take that train and you would stick it on the highway where there's 8 lanes of traffic and push it up and down all the way to Brooklyn Park as much as you want to, as fast as you want to, without having to worry about hitting a kid riding a bicycle or hitting a car trying to make a left turn, trying to beat the train. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Can I just piggyback on the exploitation part? We're gonna talk about exploitation right now. They're using the Congo. They put him in front when they had all those events in North Minneapolis. They chose him to lead the discussions. They're exploiting, they doing it right now face. So it's just evident. That's all I wanted to say. No disrespect, Congo, I respect you, but they put you in a position because you're African, we're Black, we got the same skin color. So they go put you as the face of leading these conversations over in North Minneapolis when they've already made their manner. So they was like, oh, we're gonna put him out there and let him lead the conversation. That's true. They doing it right now. That's why you here with them right now.
Be mindful of the space that we are currently on. No, I know, but what I'm saying is that everyone who's talking who doesn't have a microphone in their hand, no one can hear it. So I just want to be mindful that we want to keep, the microphone passed around for the people who are talking and try to keep it one person at a time. This is an open conversation. We've heard a lot from community. I know Justice is queued to go next, but I didn't really feel like I needed to invite other people to be a part of the conversation. That invitation was extended when we started having the discussion. So please, whenever you feel comfortable and you have a comment, just let us know. We'll pass you the microphone.
I'll be pretty quick. I kind of wanted to say something about the engagement portion of it because I was a pretty big part of that, especially in the beginning of the project. I worked for an organization who was doing anti-displacement engagement. And one of the things that I heard somebody say, I can't remember, they said that they think that maybe the engagement was done in good faith, but I would disagree with that wholeheartedly. And the reason that I disagree with that is because I don't believe that engagement can be in good faith if the decision has already been made before the engagement begins. Um, one of the biggest problems that we had when we were engaging with community, and we engaged with residents who lived there, we engaged with people who were houseless who lived in the area, we engaged with students, we engaged with families, we engaged with business owners. And one of the biggest things was that they would ask us a lot, well, if the decision's already been made, what are you even talking to me about? Why are you even having a conversation with me? What questions are you genuinely even asking? And then when we would give recommendations to Met Council, when we give the recommendations to the city, they would be ignored, they would be pushed to the side, or we would be told we can't do that. And so being a part of the engagement on that project, which I did for 3 years, I think was very frustrating. And I think that especially for the North Side, it is very frustrating when people come in and they say, hey, we want to do this thing for you. And then we find out it's actually not for us and that we actually don't get to decide what the say is. That's like somebody coming to you and is like, okay, well, for lack of a better analogy, I'm going to give you these bananas. And you say, I'm allergic to bananas. And they say, well, you should be grateful for what I put on your plate. And yeah, I don't agree with that. And I think too, on another note, in engagement, it didn't really matter who we were talking to, whether it was somebody who was rich in the neighborhood, poor in the neighborhood, somewhere in between. For the most part, during that engagement, we don't need a train. We have enough bus lines. We don't understand what the point of this is, and we don't understand how it benefits us. Even when we would come with what Met Council or the city would say, this is the benefits that they're saying you're going to have, people would be like, that's not what I want. And I think that was very heavily and still is very heavily ignored. So yeah, that's what I want to say.
Hey, I'm Roxanne, and I've been a long time North Sider. My mom moved here in like '87 when they were looking for more Black teachers. Um, I grew up, I became an activist, I became not just a community organizer, but an environmental justice organizer. Um, I have also watched this fight for a while since the train was going up Penn, and I remember a lot of Black homeowners very frustrated um, with how the train was going to come down Penn and just basically knock out a lot of Black wealth. Um, Home ownership is one of the main ways to have wealth in this country, and yeah, I think our communities have been hit the hardest when it comes to um, of not being able to have that opportunity. In many ways, constantly we are hit with different things. We've got different issues happening on the north side, from the tornado, as someone said in 2011, the foreclosure crisis. I mean, even a Black family who makes 3 times as much as a white family is less likely to get a home. And so we're dealing with quite a few issues. I think we have some infestations going on with emerald ash borer trees, which has been also connected to people's homes being targeted, and liens being placed on their homes. So um, we've been seeing just a lot of different ways in which governments have been basically disrupting our communities and have been doing it for so long. So yeah, I agree that the fact that this is even being thought about to put a train on a business corridor that seems to be monopolized by a couple of different places. I think Ackerberg and Wellington or something might own quite a few businesses along Broadway. But I think also I am a business owner too. I just say I'm a community organizer, but I actually hire people and pay them well. And um, yeah, and I actually had some support from Kenya with some of the things coming up in my life around being an owner, or at least legitimizing my name out here. And I want to leave y'all with this, because I'm not really sad or scared of the train. I feel sad that my people think that they are forced to have this train. I feel sad that my people believe that Upper Harbor Terminal is already set in stone. Um, I think the only thing that's stopping us from stopping it is really researching the tools that we have um, to fight this. I think litigation might be one of those tools, being that we've had history of redlining as well as freeways coming through our communities. The fact that people in government are trying to get away with this is it's wild. But that's white supremacy and that's how it's been for generations. So I think the best way for, if maybe people have to do some sort of class action lawsuit to interrupt this, we tried to do it with Upper Harbor. We didn't make it in time. We missed the deadline. That was the only reason why we lost. It wasn't that we weren't right. But I think that this is a prime example. I think we need to be careful of committees that, the government often puts people on because they use it as a tool to kind of control, our directions. And I mean, I'm a firm believer of questioning authority and also holding you all accountable. I think, you guys need to ask yourselves, can you sleep at night? You know, because I think what you're doing is you're about to destroy generations to come. And so just, I don't want to be too serious about it, but my mama does still live in the neighborhood and I do care about people from this neighborhood. And I think that I don't know, we all should just get together and recognize our power and just say no, honestly. I think that is the key. Is just, okay, I think we need to keep up with just saying no. I know people don't like it when our communities are like, that's all they say. They don't want development. They don't want anything. No, we do want development. We want people and community centered development. We want development that we start with that is based on the needs of our communities, not development that is based on the needs of the government and of the elite.
Make some space for y'all. It's interesting going after everyone else because what I came thinking that I was going to say has already been said. And it's true, when Tito, you were talking about like, well, we don't know what's going to happen with the property taxes, or those were some of the concerns that you were hearing. As a community organizer in Frogtown, I can tell you that is what will happen. We're seeing people with their property taxes increased by like seriously 400%. And so,
And that's already happening on the north.
yeah, it's starting to happen. And I think the comeback to that is like, well, your property values are going to go up. You can only really take advantage of that if you're ready to sell, or if you're taking on debt. And so, I mean, if people are selling, that's displacement right there. That's exactly what we're talking about. Historically, throughout the country, it's the transportation that comes, then the development that comes, and then the displacement. And then we get into this whole political realm of like all of the money that comes along with it, where it's like these types of things happen in opportunity zones, or there's TIF funding that comes, or there's more funding because of the investment with the trains and all of those kinds of things. And so then you have prime real estate, these developers, a lot of times they're all in the same circles. They know, and they can speculate when development comes, like, well, I'm going to sit and hold this property until it gets really popping. And then I'm going to really generate my money. We're seeing it where the soccer stadium is in the Midway. That's right across from you. And so, it will happen. It has happened. It continuously happens. So to say we're going to do studies or we're going to research, that's nothing. It's a waste of money because we're just spending money. We just paying people salary to do busy work when we know that that's what's going to happen. Justice, your point. I mean, people get burned out on engagement. There's engagement tap out, where it's like, dang, you ask me all these questions. You give me a $25 gift card. You're not taking what I'm saying really into consideration. That's where people lose the will to vote. You know what I mean? Like, why am I going to show up and vote if they don't hear what I'm saying anyways? And so like, it really disempowers a community where we keep tapping on them, right? So we're not just exploiting them for money, but we're exploiting them for their intellectual input, for their personal experiences.
And, you know, in my opinion, what needs to happen, because I feel like the development is inevitable. There's not a whole lot that we can do. I want to be more optimistic with you, Roxanne. But and it's, you know, I think what needs to happen is that there needs to be some policy that goes along with development, because we can't out organize development. The pipeline is too long. By the time we see things, we're already 15 years down the pipeline. All this money's already been invested. I mean, there needs to be some tearing down of silos where we're partnering with other levels of government to implement protective policies. We need rent stabilization. If you were telling me that my property taxes aren't going to be increased, or you're saying it's not a concern, well, tell that to the property owner. Tell him he can't raise my rent crazy. Or having things like just cause, where you can't be evicted for no reason. You know, we see people sell their property because they know that it's valuable. That's real estate. That's capitalism. And so I really feel like one of the solutions is we need to have protective policies in place. And if we're not talking development and protective policies, we know who is going to be on the receiving end of that. The negativity that's going to come from that is going to affect Indigenous people the most, and then Black people, and then all of the rest of the people of color. And then you have the people who are affected, who fall in economically. So we got white people in there too. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, this isn't, it's not new. And so I appreciate being in the space, but yeah, I'm in agreement. I just think that we need some protective policies in place. And I know that y'all got the reach to make stuff like that happen. So do we. So
I know that we've heard from people in the room who have been impacted. There's also people in the room who are currently working on the project. I want to make another solicit an invitation for you all to participate in this conversation. So please introduce yourself. Don't forget to introduce yourself.
Thank you. So I'm Anjali Mishra Cameron. I'm a Met Council member that represents District 8. And I think, you know, in listening to this conversation, I wanted to hear so many voices. I am new to this project. This is something that I am still learning about, still understanding. And there are a lot of folks in this room who have been on this journey a lot longer than I have, and I have a lot to learn about it. I think one of the things that keeps coming up, there's this thread that comes up, and it's really that there is no denying it. You know, the way government is structured, it is built on the exploitation of Black and brown bodies. And how do we, there's this conversation about not having this line. If we have this line in this community, how do we change that? Is there a way to change that? Or is it so deeply rooted in government that there's no way to change that? I'm not that pessimistic, and I know others in this room will disagree with me, but is there a way to do this in a way that benefits the community? I mean, I look at the other part of my district has Southwest Light Rail in it, and I see the benefit to those communities. There is investment. Why is that not happening here? We all know the answer to why that's not happening here, but how do we change that? We are walking with our eyes wide open. We are not naive to this. They can only do it so many times before you recognize the issue. And so many examples have been listed in this room. So how do we do this differently? Can we do it differently?
My name is Reva Chambliss. I'm a resident of the city of Brooklyn Park. I'm also vice chair of the Met Council and vice chair of the Transportation Committee that sits on the Corridor Management Committee that works and plans this project. I am also the granddaughter of a grandmother who lived in the projects of North Minneapolis, and that's where my mother lived. I lived in North Minneapolis for a time as well, and still have relatives and many friends and people who are sitting in this room, like Tito and Kenya and others that I value. I value my community, and I've been working on this project for over 15 years. before I got on the Met Council, because I wanted to make sure that our community had representation. That is so very important. Is it perfect? Of course not. I understand why there is a lack of trust, because there have been hundreds and hundreds of years of evidence that where we were oppressed as people of color, and that continues today. So this conversation to me is very important as a policymaker, because I see my role as someone that needs to push and push and push to make sure that we understand what community means, that we put our people first, that we look at implementing policies in a way that makes us whole, that makes us right, and do that with equity. And so all of these conversations are information that I take back to the executives at the Metropolitan Council, since I sit on the executive leadership team, and I talk to our Hennepin County officials and also our city officials. And we have a lot of work to do. I think we can look at what has not worked well for our community, as well as what worked well for our community. And we cannot do that unless we do an assessment. I have often talked about the fact that we need to look at what has happened in North Minneapolis over the years. Go back and analyze what happened during the real estate, the real estate crisis, yes. What happened to North Minneapolis then? I saw whole blocks foreclosed on in North Minneapolis and did a presentation on that, which I didn't see in the media. I was like, what is this? Why is this not being highlighted? And then right after that housing crisis was the tornado. And then there are other factors, due to the way that capitalism works and the society works and how our communities are perceived. It has to change. And I'm going to do everything in my power to work with other people and to make sure they're listening to your voices so we can do this better. We do have an anti-displacement group for this corridor project with the Blue Line extension that we did not have before. We also have federal protections that are in place that need to be honored so that our people don't go back and we have this cycle repeating itself. It's a continuous process of work. And my door is open to talk with all of you about what work that we need to get done, as well as, having other policymakers and city officials, because I think the capacity building that is in place now that wasn't in place before for communities needs to start with people and making sure that they have the resources to drive their own vision for what success looks like. And I don't think we're close. We have a lot more work to do.
Can I say something? Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. Okay, sorry.
Thank you. On behalf of the county and Met Council and our team implementing the project, we really appreciate the opportunity to hear these stories, to hear where people come from. These are difficult. In the general term of it, what we're trying to do here is build a light rail line, build a system. And I represent, I work for the Hennepin County, and so I have a county board that wants to build a world-class transit system in the Twin Cities to serve residents of Hennepin County and others. And so how do we do that? And how do we do that where we're not only building it? And one of the things I want to definitely touch on is the idea of, if we think of this line as a way for people in Brooklyn Park to get to downtown Minneapolis, then I don't think we're thinking about it. The end result is hopefully that it is a two-way system that goes and connects the north side, Robbinsdale, Crystal, Brooklyn Park, the communities on this with the rest of the region. So it's not about necessarily how folks can get, how residents in Brooklyn Park can get to work in downtown Minneapolis, but it can be about how somebody on the east side of St. Paul or along University in St. Paul can get to businesses on the north side, to a job, to do those businesses, or how a resident living in the north side can get to the University of Minnesota or can get to a job in Eden Prairie. Those can all be pieces of it. So it really can't be, and we try anyway to envision how we are going to build a transit line that is not built through North Minneapolis, but that is built in North Minneapolis, that it becomes part of North Minneapolis and to serve North Minneapolis like other places in the region. And so we talked about, Kenya talked a little bit about the 3 stations that were added. They weren't going to originally be on Central Corridor in the original part of that. And it's interesting that you bring that up because I went back and took a look at, was it beneficial to build those 3 stations? The ridership on opening day at those stations is equal to what the ridership is today. They are serving people. People are using it at that station, and there is some development happening around each of those spots. So can we envision a way that Northside residents and Northside, North Minneapolis businesses can be the benefiters of the investment that's being made in this light rail system? How can we envision working together? And I mean, that's the direction that I've been given from our county board members, and that Chris and our team gets from the Met Council members, is we're not trying in this case to build something through somewhere impacting people, but to bring them in as well. So success hopefully is a transportation line serving generations to come, to build up the communities where it's been built.
So I want to be respectful of people's time. It's 6:28. We said we'd be wrapping this discussion up at 6:30. I do have a question, and hopefully someone who's working on the project can answer this piece here. To your point about the desire and hope for this project to serve North Minneapolis, what we've heard from people who are working and running businesses every single day, from people who are helping people get housing and organizing in neighborhoods, is that there's concerns that they don't want it. Is there, we know there's a recommended route, but is there still an opportunity for the feedback that's being brought forth to be implemented in your plan?
The answer, of course, is we're a long way from beginning construction. We're a long way from, there's decisions that need to be made all the way along here. This will be a significant investment of that will require a lot of tough decisions by elected officials throughout. And so we've changed many things along this line as we've implemented it from the start, and that will continue. And so to the extent that we are able to change things and take feedback and make those modifications, we will do that, all to the extent of, I think people would understand, we don't necessarily as staff get to decide whether or not the project is going to go forward. That will be for the policymakers. But will we get,
So where do people get that information?
I mean, that any information that comes to us as staff, I mean, people can always reach out to their council members, to their county commissioners, to their city council members. They can. But that information, if it comes to us, we are sharing that daily with our policymakers on what's happening with this project and how to do that. That is always an open opportunity.
So it's 6:30. I really have to be respectful of people's time. We anticipated that this would happen, that there's not enough seats in the room to get everybody's voices that matter in here, that there's not enough time in the day to fully go deep on this issue. But I am thankful for everybody who showed up today. I'm thankful for your investment of time. I value your time, and I value your voices and your work in community. And I would hope that this would just be one of a series of conversations, because what we are hearing as a journalist, my job is to find the truth. And I've pounded the blocks, I've driven the route, we've talked to a lot of people, and we have not been successful in finding people who want this light rail in their community. And so it is concerning to speak to officials as a journalist and get information to report to our community that engagement is being done. So if engagement is being done, is it being implemented? And so I will leave that there. I know that there's so many people in here who are feeling like we don't have resolve or we don't have solutions. To Farji's point, we could talk till we're blue in the face. But my hope is really that conversations can be transformative, that there is power in stories, and hearing the stories of the people who are going to be impacted by this will really help drive this process if we are truly doing things in an equitable way. If we are really a different society than what we were when 94 was built or when the Green Line was built, that these voices today will be heard and that will be implemented in the project to come. And that we will continue to follow the story, that we will continue to search for people who maybe have different viewpoints, that we will continue to amplify the voices of the people who will be affected by this project. And we will continue to reach out and ask for answers, and follow developments as they happen in organizing potentially to find alternative routes to get people's voices heard. And so with that, in closing, we want to thank everybody who has joined us today. We want to send a huge thank you to SPEAK MPLS production team, who spent a lot of time preparing for this live cast and this conversation. Please continue to support SPEAK MPLS. If you're watching at home and still have questions or comments about the Blue Line extension, feel free to reach out to any of the community members who are here today, or you could check metcouncil.org for their information as well. You can also connect with your local elected officials. Thank you to our panelists. We appreciate your time and your voices. I hope you guys all have a wonderful Wednesday evening. Take care.
Thank you.